This October, I decided to watch an interesting set of anime. I know, it's been a while. What they all had in common was that they took place in a futuristic, technologically advanced, and dystopian world. By the time I finished all of them, I realized just how diverse the dystopian genre of anime is, despite the genre originating and being predominantly Western. And thus I decided to dedicate a video to exploring the diverse variety the genre has to offer. The anime I watched were Psycho Pass Season 2, as I saw the first season back in April. I also watched Terminator Zero and Cyberpunk Edgerunners. These are three different stories with distinct themes and styles unique to them. So without further ado, this is a variety of dystopian/futuristic anime. Before delving into the different themes and styles of each anime, I think it's important to talk about each of the anime's stories, just to have some prior knowledge before jumping into the topic of discussion. However, I still want to come in with the condition of spoiling as few details as possible, in case any of you are interested in watching any of these anime. Psycho Pass Season 2 takes place in a futuristic world run by the Sybil system. The Sybil system was created to lower crime. The way it does this is through giving everyone a psychopass that measures a person's mental health. It also gives people a crime coefficient, which is a numeric measure of how likely it is for someone to commit a crime. The higher the coefficient, the more likely someone is to commit a crime. Finally, a psychopath shows an individual's hue or color. Hue is a rather complicated idea. All you really need to know is that light colors mean that you aren't crazy, and if your hue is cloudy, it means you're under some sort of distress. It's a running theme in the anime that the Sybil system is rather inefficient and harmful, since there are many situations in which a group of people's crime coefficient goes up as a result of traumatic events, and innocent bystanders are wrongfully punished. Justice is administered in Psychopaths through the Ministry of Public Welfare's Bureau of Public Safety. The Bureau serves as the police department of Psychopaths, kind of how police officers have different roles in the real world. In Psychopaths are divided into two different groups, the enforcers and the inspectors. An inspector is superior to an enforcer. Inspectors investigate cases, while an enforcer does all of the brute work. You may be asking yourself, what kind of person chooses to be an enforcer? The answer is latent criminals. They are the enforcers, since they're seen as lesser in the society of psychopaths. Because latent criminals are people with high crime coefficients, it's important to mention that latent criminals haven't committed any crime, but are perceived to have the capability of it, thus the latent part in latent criminal. They take the harsher, more dangerous job of the enforcer. In the same way a police officer keeps a weapon with him in case he needs to stop a criminal, inspectors and enforcers also carry a special weapon known as a Dominator. A Dominator is a special futuristic gun that can both evaluate someone's mental state as well as suppress them with lethal or non-lethal force. The Dominator is able to identify the identity of the user of the Dominator as well as the identity of who it's being pointed at. The Dominator is connected to the Sybil system to be able to measure someone's psychopaths and calculate their crime coefficient. The Dominator has three different modes: non-lethal paralyzer, lethal eliminator, and destroy decomposer. The non-lethal paralyzer is activated after being pointed to someone with a crime coefficient of 100 or higher. The Dominator in this mode shoots out a blue energy burst which paralyzes a perpetrator. The Dominator does not change forms for this mode. The lethal eliminator activates when pointed at someone with a crime coefficient of 300 or higher. The Dominator in this mode shoots out a concentrated burst of energy, hits a perpetrator, and makes them swell up and explode into a bloody, gory mess. The Dominator shifts about and transforms itself for this mode. Finally, Destroy Decomposer doesn't need a crime coefficient to operate. It's mainly used for drones, vehicles, and armored persons who have no crime coefficient. Each Dominator has a total of 3 decomposer shots. In this mode, the Dominator will leave no traces of blood or metal behind. The Dominator also goes under a more extensive transformation for this mode. Separate from all of this, the world of Psychopaths has many other technological advancements, such as robots, drones, the ability to morph yourself into a virtual avatar, having an AI assistant change the layout of your house, cameras that measure people's psychopaths, and much, much more. As for the story itself, I won't delve too much into it. Basically, Season 2 follows the inspector, Tsunemori Akane, as she goes from being a newbie in Season 1 to an experienced inspector in Season 2. Akane and her co-worker Shimotsuki Mika, along with the rest of her division, which has some new inclusions, work on resolving a string of cases where the cryptic message WC question mark is left behind. I will talk more about the story as it becomes relevant to the overall topic. Terminator Zero has a lot less world building than Psycho Pass, so it won't take as long to explain this one. The world of Terminator Zero is set in 1997 and frequently jumps ahead in time to 2022. In the world of Terminator Zero, humans built these 1NNO robots, which are capable of basic tasks such as stocking products and dog walking. However, they aren't capable of higher levels of thought. They are very common in Terminator Zero. Another robot which has integrated itself into society is the Kaneko cat robot, which is like a cat, but a robot. That's it. Other than this, the world of Terminator Zero is relatively similar to ours today. I mean, hey, we even have those like cat robots. As for the actual story, Terminator Zero follows scientist Malcolm Lee as he works on an AI he calls Kokoro that he created to save humanity from Skynet on Judgment Day. Malcolm Lee knows about Judgment Day through nightmares. However, another reason is given later on in the anime, and I don't want to spoil that for you. This hot chick named Eiko travels back in time to stop Lee because Kokoro is seen as a danger to humanity in the future, which really sets up the anime for the viewer. Do we trust Kokoro or not? Further helping the case against Kokoro, she isn't exactly convinced to help humanity because of war and destruction and all those other tendencies that we have. So a big part of the anime is Malcolm trying to convince Kokoro is good by providing his greatest, smartest ace attorney argument. Anyways, along with Eiko, a Terminator is sent back in time as well. While Eiko wants to stop Lee from launching Kokoro because Kokoro is believed to worsen Judgment Day, the Terminator is sent to kill Malcolm because Kokoro is a threat to Skynet. So neither like Kokoro. There's a lot of drama involving the safety of Malcolm's kids during this, since the Terminator's plan is to use them to get Malcolm to shut down Kokoro and then kill them all as well. There's a lot of complicated timeline stuff which we don't need to get into until later on, so I'll spare you that for now. Cyberpunk Edgerunners has the most world building out of any of the anime on here, so I will try my gosh darn hardest to not talk about it for too long. Edgerunners takes place in a big city called Night City in 2076. In it, there are many technological advancements such as the development of cyberware. Cyberware are cybernetic attachments which add or replace parts of the human body. A key example of this is David Sandovistian, which slows down time. There are also other things like Pillar's very long fingers. Outside of this, there are other technological advancements such as these flashing light arrows on the ground that guide people to where they need to go, and holographic messages limiting access to certain locations. There's also these flying pods in which the trauma team ride in. The trauma team is a corporation which specializes in quick medical services. They arrive quickly and are armed to the teeth in case of foul play related deaths. The way they are notified is kind of complicated. Okay, so basically everyone has these chips in their heads called chipware that can perform calls using their consciousness, look at porn, and a variety of other things, including calling the trauma team if your chip senses you're dying. Now, the trauma team isn't some government healthcare program, it's a business, a corporation. The thing about corporations in Cyberpunk is that they're very much like corporations during the Gilded Age of American history, meaning they control everything. And there are only a few of them. Two specific mega corporations to keep in mind are Arasaka and Militech, which are both rival tech companies. Think of Pepsi and Coke, but not for poison sugar water, instead for technology and guns and military stuff. There are also cultural developments like new slang, which shows just how much thought was put into this world. The word shroom means friend. To be chipped is to have cyberware as opposed to being a natural human. That same definition can be used for chromed. Apart from this, there is a phenomenon known as cyberpsychosis, which is where someone is way too chromed, has too much cyberware, and they start going crazy. This appears a few times in the anime, wink wink. People experiencing cyberpsychosis are often called cyberpsychos. There are also new professions in the future of cyberpunk edgerunners. One of these is the job of the Ripper Doc, who illegally installs cyberware in people, without anesthesia, mind you. This looks so painful. Basically a very shady back alley surgeon. Another one of these aforementioned cultural developments is the development of the cyberpunk subculture. A cyberpunk is someone who is a punk. They oppose the government and these mega corporations, and they have crazy hairstyles and they're pretty close to punks in real life. They're also called edgerunners. Edgerunners are people who live on the edge. Get it? No, actually, though. They generally oppose and actively work towards harming corporations through the use of organized crime, like man and his cronies. A cyberpunk or edgerunner can also be called a netrunner. Netrunners are skilled hackers who use special augmented interface systems attached to their brain through brain-computer interface implants. They also seem to take ice baths a lot for some reason. Netrunners are able to physically transport themselves into the internet. Imagine a little sawdust walking across his YouTube page. As for the story, Cyberpunk Edgerunners follows 17-year-old David Martinez from Santo Domingo in Night City. It follows his story as he joins a group of cyberpunks and becomes a Night City legend. David and his boss work for a guy named Faraday, who works for one of the mega corporations, the corporation being Militech. Faraday wants to bring down Arasaka by gathering information on it through the Edgerunners. Okay, that was a lot. Now I will get into what makes each of these anime similar and different from one another. So this is your final warning to watch these anime if you don't want to get some major spoilers, bruh. These anime have a lot of different technologies unique to them, and some technology that they all share, which I will now be exploring. First and foremost, all three anime have robots in one shape or form since it's the future, and you can't have good future media without robots. I mean, who could imagine that? Anyways, Psychopaths has these little security drones who walk around patrolling, scanning people to check their psychopaths. Additionally, there are also military drones that get hacked in Season 2, Episode 5. Whereas in Terminator Zero, there are robots called 1NNOs that take over some menial tasks such as walking dogs and stocking shelves. In Cyberpunk Edgerunners, in Episode 5, there are robots in the form of defense drones who shoot at Lucy, David, and Dorio, while Lucy and Dorio try to free David from his capture at the hands of Jimmy Kurosaki. So whereas in Psychopaths and Cyberpunk Edgerunners, robots are used for military defense and surveillance purposes, we can see that the world of Terminator Zero isn't far enough into the future for that. In Terminator Zero, they're still in the early adoption phase of new technology. Think of it like the creation of the internet in the early 80s. The internet didn't have widespread usage. It was more for certain professionals that worked with data. But now the average person can go on it and corrode their brain with skitty riz TikToks. It's the same idea in Terminator Zero. Robots are just beginning to be used for certain jobs. Aside from robots, another technological similarity is that all three have AI. In Psychopaths, Inspector Akane Tsunemori has a personalized AI assistant that helps Akane customize her home with different lighting, temperatures, and all sorts of settings. It can also remind Akane of upcoming events or responsibilities she has to take care of. She's basically like Siri, I guess. The AI also provides Akane with entertainment as seen in Season 1 when Akane used it to investigate Spooky Boogie's stream amongst other functions. And yes, I know I'm talking about Season 1 when I'm only supposed to talk about Season 2. I'm sorry, but if it makes you feel better, Akane uses her AI in Season 2 when she deactivated her holographic home setting to reveal that the murder signature WC was left at her home. Of course, AI is a big part of Terminator Zero as well, since Malcolm is using his AI Kokoro to save the world from Skynet, who is an AI itself. So yeah, AI in Terminator Zero is probably the central theme, and it shows how different people respond to the rise of AI. So while there is the presence of AI in both anime, the function of it is very different. In Psychopaths, AI is mainly used for convenience. Like a personal assistant, Akane's AI is mainly there to change Akane's wallpaper, tell her the weather, basic stuff like that. This is starkly different from the purpose that AI has in Terminator Zero. In Terminator Zero, AI isn't used for any sort of leisure. Malcolm and all of humanity depend on Kokoro to stop Judgment Day and the rise of Skynet. So whereas in Psychopaths, AI is used for leisurely purposes, in Terminator Zero, it's seen as an ally like Kokoro, or more as a threat, like Skynet, or hell, even Kokoro. Kokoro can fit into both categories. After all, a big part of the anime is deciding whether or not we can trust Kokoro. Other technologies that Psychopaths, Terminator Zero, and Cyberpunk Edgerunners all have in common in their respective stories are holograms or simulations. In Psychopaths, we spoke of Akane's AI assistant who could simulate environments for Akane's home. There's also the chicken game in episode 5 that simulated war machines that killed several machine workers and inspectors/enforcers as well. Then in Terminator Zero, there's a big philosophical question that is very important to the story, that being the question of if humanity is more harmful than it is good. In the anime, it's Malcolm's job to provide a convincing argument to Kokoro that humanity is worth more good than bad, and it's masterfully visualized by the animators through a variety of different fiery scenes. Now, Cyberpunk Edgerunners also has a form of simulation. In the second episode, near the end, Lucy takes David to a hyper-realistic simulation of the moon. She's in awe. There she shares with David that her dream is to move to the moon and escape Night City before being rudely interrupted by Maine. Another example of this is when David's friend Doc hijacks David's brain and plays a porn BD or brain dance, which is a technology that allows for people to replay someone's past experience along with their emotions. I, of course, can't show you this, so enjoy the blurred screen. As we can see, simulations and holograms and psychopaths, like AI, are more for entertainment. This is shown with Akane's AI assistant simulations that allow for the customization of the user's home. It's similar in the way to Cyberpunk's simulations. They're both mainly for entertainment and are also heavily fixated on the changing of environments. We see this through Akane's AI changing room backgrounds, and we see it through Lucy and David changing their environmental awareness to feel like they're on the moon, kind of like a VR headset in the real world. Oh, also, did I mention that there's simulated porn in Cyberpunk? Wow, even more evidence of simulations being mainly used to change the user's surrounding environment. Wait, Doc, what are you doing? There is also the presence of ID technology in all three anime, and psychopaths, cameras, dominators, and other technologies such as Kane's AI can identify people and their psychopaths, as seen in Season 1, Episode 2. In Terminator Zero, the Terminator needs Malcolm's permission to enter his workroom. To even enter the room, Malcolm needs to pass through some areas not shown in the anime, but it's safe to assume there's a lot of security requiring some form of identification in Malcolm's workplace. In Cyberpunk, cyberware has a caller ID built into people's vision. David also has to use retinal scans to enter his home. Something interesting I found in common between Psychopaths and Cyberpunk was the existence of cyborgs. It isn't so much that cyborgs like Atom Smasher and generally just a ton of characters exist. It's more so how much advanced Cyberpunk's cyborgs are than the one cyborg in Psychopaths. This goes to show that these anime all take place in different times technologically. I talked about robots being in the early adoption stage in Terminator Zero, since they're used for some jobs. And here in Psychopaths, it seems cyborgs aren't even at the level of usage that robots are in Terminator Zero. All the while, in the world of cyberpunk, cyborgs are the norm. Anyways, the cyborg is called Toyohisa Senguji, and he doesn't have the strength or features the average cyberpunk does. So while there's characters like David with their Sandevistan implants slowing down time, Senjugi walks looking all goofy like and has two hunting dogs, and that's all. No unique abilities, just somewhat stronger than the average human. The three anime I watched have several commonalities in their governments, and unique characteristics in them that set them apart. Governments in these anime work on a spectrum, a regulation spectrum that ranges from high regulation to low regulation. On the high end, Psychopaths is a world where the population is heavily regulated by the government. The national government works alongside the civil system to govern the population, specifically to monitor their human tendency for crime. The civil system does this through the Ministry of Welfare's Public Safety Bureau, which I mentioned earlier, who police Japan and detain any latent criminals using their dominators. In addition to this, the government has an array of different tools they use to regulate the population of Japan. These tools include cameras to capture people's behaviors and to read their psychopaths, robot mascots or whatever these things are that inform people of restricted areas, and police robots that serve as deterrents for crime, since they also record activity and have the capability to shock criminals. This is different from Cyberpunk Edgerunners in the way that the government doesn't have the omnipotence and power that it does in Psychopaths. This is shown through the existence of cyberpunks who are people that are openly anti-government with little to no repercussions from the government itself, and are literally just punks during the cybernetic age, hence the term cyberpunk. Moreover, the government of Cyberpunk doesn't have the desire to monitor its citizens' mental health like in Psychopaths, since it's a non-regulatory government, or is at least less regulatory than the government of Psychopaths. So in this way, Cyberpunk Edgerunners differs from the average dystopian government you would read in a class such as 1984 or even dystopian media you would watch for fun like Psychopaths. This is because Cyberpunk Edgerunners takes the traditional dystopian government that controls the lives of its citizens too heavily and turns it on its head by making the government not act enough and instead leave big businesses without the interests of the people in charge. Furthermore, the police in Cyberpunk are rather inefficient. at least compared to the Public Safety Bureau and Psychopaths. This is shown in the opening scene of the anime when a cyberpsycho uses Sandevision, which is cyberware that slows time for others, but not for the user. The cyberpsycho is able to go on a rampage and kill a ton of Night City PD officers before ultimately being stopped by a Max Tech team. A Max Tech team is a team that has higher firepower than regular police officers and are called to deal with cyberpsychos. Think of them as a SWAT team compared to a regular cop. Another example of this is the lack of fear that David's boss Maine has for the police. Heavy spoilers coming up right now for Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Maine and his crew are in a compromised position, and they trigger a hostage's chip, which notifies the trauma team. Right after this, Maine and his girlfriend's subordinate Dorio fight some Night City police officers. Maine is less worried about the police officers since he's armed to the teeth with cyberware, but he's afraid of the trauma team, who are equipped for anything. This demonstrates how even a corporation's interests are more powerful than the government's desire to fulfill their duty of protecting their citizens, since the trauma team works for profit and has to be heavily armed in order to meet the needs of its customers. However, it's also important to mention that enforcers and inspectors in the world of psychopaths aren't equipped for fighting cyberpsychos who go through more rounds than a German MG42 on D-Day. So it could be that the government of psychopaths is only effective at keeping control of its citizens and criminals because they are mostly unarmed, except for a few exceptions of criminals who have access to bombs. Whereas the government of Cyberpunk Edgerunners has a hard time regulating crime because it's pretty easy to find and ship new, militant, and highly illegal cyberware. Another large overarching difference between the government of these anime, aside from the reason for and amount of regulation in government, is that in Psychopaths Japan is ruled by a centralized government, or a bureaucracy. It's pretty unclear. Whatever system of government Japan has in Psychopaths, it's very different from the world of Cyberpunk Edgerunners. The world of Cyberpunk Edgerunners is very similar to that of the Gilded Age. Yup, it's time for a quick little history lesson. The Gilded Age was a time period of American history spanning from around 1877 to around 1900, characterized by low government regulation, resulting in a majority of industries cutting corners and mistreating workers in order to make higher profits. More importantly, it directly allowed for the rise of monopolies. No, not the game you and your family rage over on Christmas. Monopolies are corporations that acquire other competition in a particular industry by buying out their competitors. So a monopoly has no competition or few competitors in the same industry as it. For example, there's John D. Rockefeller, who owned a majority of the oil industry with his corporation Standard Oil. Okay, I went through a huge loop to explain this, but to circle back, basically Cyberpunk Edgerunners is run by big businesses called monopolies that own everything and aren't regulated by the government. And this is different from Psychopaths because there everyone is looked at under a close eye through cameras and other methods. This is why Cyberpunk's government is on the low regulation side of the regulation spectrum I previously established. All the things I just talked about, the degree of regulation, motivations for regulation, and systems of government could be different from the government in the world of Terminator Zero. I said they could instead of saying that they are because the government isn't actually directly mentioned or shown in the anime. We only ever see the governmental entity that is the police in the anime, and all they do is fight the Terminator and generally try to keep the peace when Aiko's like stealing cars and running amok on the streets, so we can't really say for sure how the government works. But as far as we know in the anime, there is some form of executive branch of government that is responsible for carrying out laws, which is something all three anime hold in common. All three anime have an executive branch responsible for administering justice. In Psychopaths, the Ministry of Welfare's Public Safety Bureau is responsible for apprehending latent criminals. In Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the Night City PD stops cyberpsychos like the guy from episode 1 and gangs like Maine's gang from committing crimes. However, another thing that sets Cyberpunk apart is how corporate entities like the trauma team are able to administer justice as a government would with no repercussions. There isn't much I can cover for Terminator Zero, but there is this scene where Malcolm comes into his workplace and there are protests happening outside. The protesters' main grievance is the fact that the robots are taking jobs and that many of them are capable of working. It makes sense for the protesters to be protesting outside of Malcolm's workplace because Malcolm directly works on developing AI. The fact that the protesters didn't all get mowed down by the police demonstrates that there is the right to assembly in the world of Terminator Zero, something we don't see anywhere else. Now we're finally at the main course, analyzing the themes and feels of the anime, for lack of a better term. Firstly, Psychopaths, the anime is dystopian. having a corrupt government that uses the minds of criminally asymptomatic people for a disgustingly inefficient system that monitors and micromanages every aspect of citizens' lives. However, Psychopass is more than that. Psychopass is a detective thriller. Throughout both seasons, Sakane and her co-workers are tracing every clue, interrogating every suspect, finding any lead to find and catch the murderer who's hurting the people in the system. Throughout the entire anime, you feel that thrilling adrenaline while asking yourself if this will be the episode that Kane finds the killer, or if that saboteur will get one step closer to exposing the system. Additionally, it's hard to know which characters you can trust and which ones you can't. Frequently, there are moments where it seems the character is doing something sketchy but gives a satisfactory alibi to keep you at the edge of your seat, always wondering if you can trust them or not. The technological state of Psychopaths is also very interesting. There are many times where I couldn't tell if something was real or not because the simulations are that good at hiding things. The fact that an AI assistant can change what your house looks like, but the strongest cyborg isn't equipped with weaponry tells us two things about the adoption of technology in the anime. Firstly, cyborgs are in a stage prior to the introductory stage, since there's only one cyborg mentioned in the first season. The idea is still being tested out and isn't widely accepted yet, which is why there's only one cyborg that is extremely unadvanced and doesn't have any useful features, because there isn't one, the demand, and two, the government approval. In the world of Psychopaths, it's hard to believe that the centralized authoritarian government would give its citizens the right to own weaponry, which is why the only cyborg is so unadvanced. It would be very hard to get cool cyberware add-ons like in Cyberpunk. Thus, Psychopaths brings the dystopian genre a unique technological field, having highly advanced technology that facilitates daily living and provides comfort for the average citizen through making citizens their food and changing their wallpapers, while prohibiting the usage of modern weaponry to the average citizen, such as cybernetic add-ons. Psychopaths also brings a beautiful blend of genres, blending dystopian with mystery and crime. Secondly, Terminator Zero. The anime is, of course, dystopian, but not in the authoritarian sense, but in the technological one. Terminator Zero takes place in a world where new technology is evolving, and new kinds of robots are being created. But these robots are still in their early adoption stage, since the society of Terminator Zero is only using them for some jobs, such purposes. But this isn't everything Terminator Zero is. It's not just an observation of how technology progresses, it's an anime that really gets you thinking. It's an anime that shows you the fear and uncertainty that comes along with technological advancements. Like Psychopaths, Terminator Zero has this thrilling feeling to it. The thrilling feeling of not knowing if Kokoro will help humanity and save them from doomsday, keeping the audience at the edge of their seat. Additionally, throughout the anime, it's hard to know for certain who we can trust, with the longtime caretaker of Malcolm's children, Misaki, turning out to be a robot. We see how stressful it would be to be in that sort of situation through the eyes of Kenta, Malcolm's oldest son. Throughout the anime, it's largely unclear if Malcolm's speeches about the good of humanity do much to convince Kokoro. It's gut-wrenching to watch as Malcolm tries his hardest to convince Kokoro that humanity is worth saving, all the while Kokoro easily refutes all of his points, making it hard to know if Kokoro will be of any help to humanity. The character's situation seems so grim throughout the show, with scenes like the One NNO's massacre and Silver Chariot's Requiem unstoppable tread towards the stand arrow. Wrong anime. The Terminator's unstoppable tread, always catching up with Malcolm's children, and the constant separation of said children. It feels as though there is no salvation for our heroes, but the end leaves room for hope for the future. Kokoro decides to work together with humanity, and from here an alliance between man and machine is created. So Terminator Zero brings uniquity to the dystopian genre by involving it with anti-human and anti-natalist philosophy, while at the same time giving the world a glimmer of hope, something not frequently seen in dystopian media. Finally, Cyberpunk Edgerunners. The anime is dystopian. It's similar in a sense to Terminator Zero, since neither have authoritarian governments. However, Cyberpunk Edgerunners has a different feel than Terminator. Cyberpunk is of the cyberpunk genre, which is a subgenre blending both elements of the sci-fi and dystopian genres. This is shown best through the technological advancements of Edgerunners, with concepts such as netrunners, BDs, cyberware, and many other technological advancements. There are also dystopian elements in the world of cyberpunk, such as a poor standard of living and poverty, corporatism, and much more. Other than that, Cyberpunk Edgerunners creates this strong feeling of togetherness. It's like this band of cyberpunks are a closely knit community who work for the benefit of each other. It's for this reason that the anime feels so emotional when character deaths occur. Additionally, that normalcy and good spirit that David Martinez possesses makes it easy for the average viewer to insert themselves and become the character. David's strong will and motivation make him a likable character. However, he also has a fatal flaw, that being his overinflated sense of importance. David believes he's different from everyone else, which is why he takes a shit ton of chrome and ends up getting cyberpsychosis. Well, his claim of being built different isn't the only reason he chromes up. David is also heavily influenced and inspired by his boss, Maine, who also ends up suffering from cyberpsychosis. So David follows in Maine's footsteps, gets new cyberware, and becomes the leader of Maine's squad. All the while, David is set on protecting Lucy from any danger that comes her way. Such dangers consist of that one cyber psycho that kills Pillar, the Night City PD, and the trauma team that attack Maine and the others, and from Faraday and his slimy schemes. Thus, Cyberpunk Edgerunners provides the dystopian genre not only with sci-fi elements, but also with a distinct culture of criminals that exhibit togetherness. This togetherness brings emotionality to the anime whenever misfortune strikes. This anime really hits the heart where it's weak, which is something not frequently seen in dystopian media. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. That's about everything I have for you. This video has been in the works for a very long time. As you can see, I haven't uploaded any like video essay-ish, any video essay-like videos in a long time. I've been kind of busy, but summer is beginning again and it's time to get uploading. So I'm gonna try my hardest to upload this one by the end of the month. Hope you all like it, and make sure you leave a comment, like the video, subscribe, and let me know anything else you would like to watch coming from the channel. Thank you. Goodbye.